Hello, I'm here with my Opa. You can introduce yourself.
I'm Opa Blok Jack, and this is the year 2024.
Yes. What year were you born?
36,
36.
1936.
Okay.
So I'm 88 right now. So.
And where were you born?
I was born in Utrecht.
Utrecht.
That's in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And it's a big university city now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
you were born in 36, and what year did the war start?
in 1940.
Okay. And so you remember when the war started?
Yes, I don't remember everything, but I remember certain parts of it, yes. Till I got a little older.
What are some of the key points whenever it first started that you remember?
That's when the Dutch army had to put down their weapons, and the soldiers were lined up in front of our house. We lived in a house with a little pedestrian bridge connected the property to the road, and with metal pipe railings. And some of the soldiers would walk by there and smash their rifles on the railings, so they would not hand the Germans a solid rifle. So, yeah.
And do you know about what year that was?
That was 1940.
1940 that happened?
Yeah.
Wow, so you were 4 years old?
Yeah, that was yeah.
And then past that, what do you remember, like continuing on, like 1941, 1942, do you remember anything from those years?
Yes. We lived on an island, and at that time it's connected to the mainland now by dikes, and that was an island when I lived there, and so we stayed there till 1943, and then we were evacuated from the island, and we lived with family. My dad, they were looking for my dad to work for the Germans, and he refused to do it, of course. So
what were they looking for him to do?
Because he was an engineer, so to help developing coast protections and stuff like that, bunkers and all that stuff.
So that's what they did. They would go to the Dutch and they would ask them to work for them.
No, they didn't ask. They just grabbed you off the street.
Yeah.
So because just to give you an example how they acted. Like Honey, my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, her father was killed right in front of her mother's house.
Really? What was that? Do you remember that story?
No, I remember the story from what Honey told me after the war, after she became part of the family. But that was towards the end of the war, and the Germans panicked. So to panic the population, they would pick up people just out of the blue, and they put them against the wall and shot them.
Really?
Yeah. So.
And you witnessed that?
No. Honey's mother saw it happening.
Okay.
That's her husband was killed right there.
And that was her husband.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
And they just did that just to scare people, just because they knew they were going to lose the war, and they just wanted to scare
they were
people.
losing by that time. Yeah.
Do you remember whenever the Americans got involved in the war?
I don't know. I don't, because that was very political. You didn't know that, but. We were liberated by the Canadians. That's what I remember of it. Yeah. So that whole area where we lived in that time, that was all liberated by the Canadians.
And do you remember the difference in just the architecture from the war started to the ending? Like, did you witness almost the destruction of where you lived? Because I know a lot of places got destroyed.
Yeah. Well, my parents started all over. By that time they had 3 kids, because my younger sister, Ineke, was born after the war in 48, and they lost everything during the war.
Yeah.
Because the German confiscated our house.
Yeah.
And we were not allowed to bring anything with us.
So where'd you live in the meantime when they confiscated your house?
Oh, we lived as family.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we were split up. So the 3 of us lived as one family, and my parents lived as another family, and So
how did you make it? Like, what did you guys do during the war? Because obviously they couldn't continue with their regular jobs, right?
I don't know. I don't know how they financially how they worked this. I have no idea about that.
Yeah. Because I know your mom helped she was a courier, right? Like you were saying earlier. Can you explain a little bit more about what she did and what was involved with that?
She delivered under resistant newspapers, from one cell to the next cell.
Oh,
You
really?
know,
So they had resistance newspapers?
Oh yeah, all over.
Even under German occupation?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Really?
Yeah. You know, her brother was, he belonged to what they called a killing group.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd they do with that?
During the night, they would go out,
Mm-hmm.
dressed as women and stuff like that, and attack the Germans.
Really?
Cut the throat and drop them.
Really? And your uncle did that?
Yeah, my brother, my mother's brother. Yeah.
Wow.
He used to be an amateur boxer.
Really?
So he was very strong, and yeah. So just to create panic
Yeah.
with the Germans.
Yeah. So they would go out. They would go out at night dressed as women to kill the
Yeah,
Germans.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, so.
And when about was that? Was that during the beginning of the war, end of the war,
that was
the whole
all
thing?
more towards the end.
More towards the end.
44, 45, those areas, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the in 45 when we were liberated, we had no idea, for example, where my dad's family was.
At all.
No, we had no idea where they were because we were completely separated. There was no telephone, there was no contact.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so slowly you start getting contact. You talk to people, you know, so and so, and you know, so like my parents, my grandparents, he got sons. They lived in culverts.
In a culvert, like under the street.
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Because
For how
you know,
long?
Oh, they did that for weeks.
For weeks they live in a culvert.
Because that was heavy fought areas. That was basically from one dike to the next dike to the next dike. They were liberated by the Americans, and they fought territory. So you know you couldn't stay in your house because we don't have basements.
Yeah,
you know, so you couldn't stay in the house. So my grandfather had fixed up a culvert, knowing that eventually they would have to find a place where they could hide.
Yeah.
And they so that's where they would do the heavy fighting. That's where they would go.
Really?
Yeah.
So like, I know you were a lot younger, but do you remember there being any kind of leading up to the war and concern of it? And it's like I know you said they already had that culvert in place. Did they put that in place after the war already started?
No. That was after the war started.
That was after the war started.
In '44, somewhere out there, you know. So.
Do you remember any kind of as for the Germans, and how did y'all think of them?
Well, we didn't like him, you know, and you know.
Was it more just you didn't like any Germans whatsoever?
You didn't like any German. You were not allowed to like any German.
Really?
You know?
So you couldn't have any kind of sympathy for even the people at the bottom?
You know, my sister and I were walking down a park, and because there wasn't school anymore, last year there was no school. You know, we walked down the park. I don't remember exactly what the two Germans sitting on the bench eating sandwich.
Really?
Because we hadn't seen
Like German soldiers?
Yeah, we hadn't seen food for a long time, so they knew that we were hungry.
Yeah.
Because we stood there and looked at them, and they gave us the sandwich. And instead of eating it, we threw it on the floor and we go like this.
You stomped it out?
Stomped
Their
it
food?
out.
What'd they do?
Because they started yelling at us. We ran like crazy.
Yeah.
But you know, you were not allowed to take. You want to steal it? That's okay. But
You couldn't take anything from
you
them?
can't take anything from them.
And how long after the war was there that resentment there?
Oh, that took a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my mother, for years and years, she could not think anything nice about Germans, and that's understandable. Like you know, we went through it as kids, but you don't realize the severity. And you know, from trying to find food, trying to get food. You know, I remember one day they got a hold of a farmer, and they were allowed to come and get a liter of milk.
Oh wow.
So, and it was about 13, 12 kilometers walking, and we all walked there, you know, because you stayed together. If something happened, you got killed together, right? So,
Really?
And so.
Do you remember that being a concern, like getting killed by the Germans?
No, I don't think. As a kid, no, I don't think you stop to think that way. But when we were walking there, there's a big colony of German vehicles coming down the road, and next thing I know, the Allies with the what you call the Spitfires.
Yeah.
And they attacked this group of vehicles.
Yeah.
So
And
they
you
were in
remember that?
one ditch and we were in the other ditch.
While they were all shooting at each
They
other?
were all well, they could shoot at it because they're
Yeah.
planes, you
Yeah.
know. But they must have gotten, somebody must have taken them off there. So a convoy going down the road out there,
Yeah.
go after them, you know.
So when would you say was the most stressful point for you guys during that whole period?
I think food.
Food
You know,
was
as
most
a kid,
stressful?
yeah.
But like,
You
what
were
was the
always
most?
hungry.
What was the most stressful period? You know, was it the beginning of the war, towards the end? That was the most stressful.
Yeah.
How come?
Yeah. Because, you know, you were always hungry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you were always looking for food. You're looking, you know, my brother and I, we would go out and go by the kitchens where they were making German bread and stuff like
Yeah,
that, and we're
yeah.
trying to steal them out the trucks. And,
Yeah.
You know, that's what you did.
And what would be the consequence if you got caught?
Oh, they would kick your ass.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever get caught?
No, we
No?
were quicker than they did.
That's
You know,
funny.
so, but yeah, you know, that's what it is, you know. And it takes you a long time to outgrow this attitude,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because when we went back to school,
Mhm.
we were terrible in school.
Yeah.
Because we were so used to
Stealing.
looking after yourself
Yeah.
and you know, and not accepting anything from anybody
Mhm.
because, you know, and so you took your parents' words, but no stranger, you know, is going to tell you what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a hard time going back to school. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you know, so.
So, like from like I know your parents and everything. You were with them this entire period. What do you remember from them when they were telling you about the period? Did you hear stories from them about maybe before the war or leading up to it?
No, not leading up to it. More, you know, towards the end of the war,
Mhm.
because you're older then. You know,
Mhm.
you like when the war started, I was 4, I was 8 when it was finished.
Mhm.
8, 9 years old, and
Mhm.
so you know you become more. You know, it's just
Yeah.
like same thing when you came here. You were older.
Mhm.
You remember Canada. Oh,
Mhm.
doesn't remember darn thing.
Yeah.
You know, so and that food was always the biggest obstacle. You
Yeah.
know? And money wasn't worth anything
Yeah.
because you couldn't buy anything anyhow.
Yeah.
So my parents traded,
Mhm.
you know, jewelry against food with farmers and stuff like that. You
Really?
know? And because they were, of course, lucky, they had food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the German confiscated a lot, but you know, they made sure they kept some stuff somewhere hidden too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so food was a big obstacle.
Yeah. Do you remember like so like you went hungry a lot then back
Oh
then?
yeah, like my brother and I, when the Canadians came in, we went to the market square.
Mm-hmm. Here, I'll move this for you.
Yeah.
Actually, so we can get closer.
We went to the market square,
Mhm.
and you know, the Canadians were welcomed and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And this a couple of days after
Yeah.
we were liberated,
Mhm.
and and they were passing out chocolates,
Really?
and they gave me a part of a chocolate bar,
Mhm.
and about this big, okay.
Mhm.
And you know, the bit of a chocolate bar,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and of course we were all happy, but you wouldn't eat it because
Yeah.
you have to share it with the
Yeah,
family.
yeah.
Right? So we took it home, and my mother cut it in pieces, and we got sicker than a dog.
Really, from the chocolate? Because you
From
just
the
weren't used to
chocolate.
eating
We
it?
weren't used to eating it.
Yeah.
That was greasy,
Yeah.
and we weren't used to eating food
So
like
what were
that.
you eating for the majority of the war?
Most of the time, it was basically everything was carrots and potato based. Jam was made out of carrots.
Mm-hmm.
You know, potatoes were done in all different ways. You know, stuff like that, and you know.
Were there
So-
people who were severely malnourished? Because it doesn't seem like a very high protein
Oh,
diet.
you know, they were. We were all,
Yeah.
you know, we were all
Yeah.
very much so. You know,
Mhm.
so, and we belonged to the better people because
Mhm.
my parents had stuff you could trade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there were a lot of people who were a hell of a lot worse off.
Do you remember the people who were worse off than you?
No, I don't know.
No.
No, you know, it's, yeah, you know, so.
So, like from your parents, because your parents clearly also lived through World War I. Did they remember what that was like?
Yeah, they were in their teen years then.
Yeah.
Eh? So, yeah, you know, we actually never really discussed that.
It was just something that you couldn't really talk about.
Yeah, you know. Well, yeah.
So your mom was a courier, and can you talk a little bit more about that involved with what she did?
No.
You don't really know too much about
No,
it.
I don't know much. I only learned this after the war.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so because they didn't tell us nothing. You know, so.
And do you remember what happened? Like I remember we were talking, right, about what happened with your uncle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when that happened and what that process was like? Can you explain that?
No, I don't remember when it happened. All I remember is suddenly my grandparents were at our house,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember my grandfather, my grandmother crying and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
but that's about the extent till later on in life that I learned more of what had taken place.
Yeah. So what had
They
taken
probably
place, and you
told
can
me,
explain it too.
But at that time,
Yeah.
they had told me that it didn't stay with me.
Yeah.
So.
So if you can explain what happened to them, so
The plane crashed on the roof.
yeah, the plane crashed into their house.
Yeah, and they.
Was that common back then?
No.
No.
Most of the time, that if there was any shooting going on around the area, it was a plane that might have been shot down and landed on, because it was big battles going, because, you had bombers coming from England into Germany, and then they were attacked by the Luftwaffe. Yeah, and so a lot of them, they were, they were engines missing, and they came home and two engines, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you had, towards the end of the war, we had the V1s and the V2s.
Was the city that you lived ever bombed?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was, most of it was because there was a base not too far from where we lived at that time, and they were shooting the V1s and V2s going towards England, and they were rockets actually.
Yeah.
That was the forerunners of rockets,
Yeah.
and they misfired lots of times.
Yeah.
So instead they went that way, and then they came down.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So, and guess who was the inventor of it?
Who's that?
Von Braun.
Really?
And he became the head of the U.S. Space Agency eventually after the war.
And he was the one that
He
made
was the
rockets.
one who invented all that's war material.
Yeah, that was a big issue back then. About
Yeah.
everyone was trying to get German engineers. The Americans were
Yeah.
a lot of different countries.
That's
It was
what they
terrible.
were after.
Yeah.
As soon as they got to the U.S. to Germany, they tried to get all those so-called space experts and run through the states. So but Von Braun, I think his name was Von Braun, if I remember right. Yeah. So but we were taught when if he wanted me, you could hear them. Okay, they sounded different than an airplane. And as long as you heard the engine, you were fine.
Yeah.
He was flying.
Yeah.
As soon as you heard the engine drop dead, and you lay on the ground,
Yeah.
but you look up
Yeah.
so you can see where he's going.
Yeah.
So we were taught all that kind of stuff. So.
Really? So what were some of the precautions that they taught you all to be safe during that time?
I don't really remember, but it's a survival skill develop as a kid. So.
Yeah, and how long after that did it take you to kind of settle in back to normal life after living through that?
I don't really remember when it took. I remember it took a long time.
So what was the rebuilding process like after the war?
The thing was opening up the schools so to get the kids into schools.
Because the whole time you were in school.
Yeah.
So how did they do that? Because now you're 8 years old, 9 years old, and you're just now starting school. They have you on an advanced track.
Well, we were out of school for a year.
Yeah.
About a year, so I don't really remember how, but we were all behind, but so was everybody else.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So I should have been probably in grade 3 while I was in grade 2, stuff like that, or grade 4 and 3, whatever. I don't remember that. Yeah.
And was there any concern after the war of something like that starting back up?
Oh, there probably was. I'm sure there was.
Do you remember any key points past that?
No.
So what? Yeah. So during that point, whenever everything was finishing up, and you were getting back into normal life, what was the biggest, I know you said food. Other than food, what was the biggest thing that was the?
Because food became slowly more available, of course, and everything was rationed.
Yeah.
You know, when you went to the store, you had coupons. You know, special. They were given by the government. You know, and you had to go pick those up, and then you could go to the store. You could exchange it for food. But everything was rationed, so everybody would get something. You know, like I remember one time, Bram and I, we went to the grocery store for stuff, and one of the things we needed was toilet paper. You know, because during the war we used newspapers.
Really, for toilet
You know,
paper?
yeah, you know, there was no toilet paper.
Yeah.
And so we got one roll of toilet paper, one roll.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was like gold?
That was like gold. Don't use more than one sheet. You know, so.
It's funny. And then after that, can you explain the period of your life from whenever that ended to whenever you decided to move to Canada? What were some key points in there that you can talk about?
You know, I always wanted, actually I wanted to go to New Zealand. You know, that's what I wanted to go. And
what, do you think the war was a contributing factor to why you wanted to leave?
I was always more, you know, trying to do something different. I was more outgoing that way, and you know, like I was 12, 13 years old. I was working, you know, part-time, and you know, because I always wanted money in my pocket. So, and you know, so, but one of the reasons was too that because now we're talking in the late 50s, you know, and there was a shortage of jobs. So because
what was the cause of the shortage of jobs?
Because you know, the way things was, they created a society of educational bums. Because everybody went to college or university or whatever, and nobody wanted to do the minimum labor jobs and stuff like that. So they were imported from Spain, Portugal, and Italy. That's where the labor market came from. You know, so when I went to then I got into the army because we had to serve. I got into the army, and then the ideas started to get in my head. I want to go to New Zealand. So I looked into that and, you know, investigated all that. And the reason I didn't go, you know, it was because it is so far and expensive. So I figured I'd probably never get home.
So what did you know about New Zealand back then? Because obviously they didn't have cell phones. You can't search up what it looks like.
Yeah, because we had to do a research on in high school, and I chose New Zealand. And so I had to go to the library and encyclopedias and looked all kinds of different things up, and we put an essay together about New Zealand, and that's got me interested into New Zealand, geography and stuff like that, and you know, so so then I changed that and I started to look into Canada, and then my grandmother's cousin was immigrated to the States right after the war, and he was a director for a steel company, and you know, he had a very good job, and so I never met him, but I wrote him if he would sponsor me to come to the States, and he wouldn't.
He wouldn't? Why not?
Because you had to put X amount of dollars up. So for the person who comes, and he didn't want to do that. He said, if I do it for one, I have to do it for everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
So then that's why I came here, and I figured I go from here to the States. You know, so until I met Bart, of course, everything changed after that. But you know, but before I went or came here, I decided I'd go into the army first because we had a draft system. So.
And why'd you decide to do that?
Because if I wouldn't have liked it, I could have gone back. But you get drafted till age 35. So you know, I was 22 when I came here, or 23 when I came here, and if you stay here for a couple of years and you don't like it, now suddenly you get drafted as a 26, 27-year-old. There's all those young kids. So I figured if I get it over with, at least I could go back. So so that I got in there, and then and I was going to immigrate as a friend of mine. We had all the papers ready, and 3 weeks before he backed out.
Really? Where were y'all going to move to?
So we were going to go to Simcoe.
Where's that?
That is in close to Hamilton. Because I had a friend living there, or a family that I've known for years and years, and they immigrated after the war, after the water flood in '53, and they were farmers, and they had lined up jobs for us.
Yeah.
But he backed out. He decided not to go.
So how long after the war would you say that the Netherlands got rebuilt? How long was that process?
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rebuilt with the States put up what was Marshall help. I don't know if you ever heard about that.
I heard that, yeah.
So to help rebuild Europe, and most of the money from Marshall help went to Germany.
Really?
Yeah, because Germany has always been a very industrial country.
Yeah, yeah.
So they wanted that country working because they wanted the equipment and everything that they supplied.
So they supplied more help to Germany than they did to you guys.
Yeah, they got more money from the Marshall help than any other country.
So what did you think of the Americans up to that point? Like whenever the war was going on, do you remember what whatever everyone over there thought of the Americans?
No, I don't.
No.
No, because there was no contact until after the war. So that's where the tourists started to come.
There wasn't any kind of resentment to the Americans for taking so long to join the war?
Oh no, not that I know of. No, so
it was mainly resentment towards the Germans.
That was all the resentment. Everybody hated that guy. I dated a German girl for a while. My mother couldn't stand her.
Really?
She couldn't stand her.
Do you remember what people thought about Hitler?
Oh, he was a menace. So
what did people think about him?
I don't know what everybody personally, but nobody had any use for him. So he created something in this world that was terrible. Killed millions and millions and millions of people. So forget about the Jews. Just.
Did you know any Jews during that period?
Oh yeah. I went to school with a couple of Jewish kids.
And do you know what happened to them?
No idea.
No, they probably all ended up in.
They might have gotten away, or you don't know.
Yeah. Did you know of, because I know it was kind of a secret at the time about the Jew camps and the Holocaust and everything. Do you remember? Do you remember knowing about that? It was only after the war you learned about that.
Yeah.
Do you remember what everyone thought during that period? Whenever everyone was finding that out.
It was terrible. Like Bart worked in St. Catherine's. In the hospital with an older lady, as she was a nurse too, and she worked in a concentration camp.
Really?
Don't forget too that there were a lot of good Germans. They didn't want to be there either.
Yeah.
They had no choice.
Yeah. So she remembers working in a camp?
Yeah. She told Bart many stories about it.
Do you know any of those stories? No. And that was in Canada, though. So did she move over there to Canada?
She came to Canada after the war. Yeah.
So was there a lot of people that moved after the war? Because it seems like there was a lot of people.
Yeah. Most of the time, in the time like in the 40s and the 50s, most of the people who came here were Europeans, and now it's gone in the Middle East, the Far East, and stuff like that. It was when I came here in 1960. It was a good time for Europeans to come here.
What was the major difference between Europe and Canada? Was there a lot more opportunity, more money?
What was the jobs were plentiful? So when I was in the army, I applied for 6-7 jobs. Didn't even get a response.
Really?
There
just wasn't any work over there.
There was no work. It was very, and like I said, it was a society of educated bums. So, people had choices, If you don't want to work for this, then I'll hire him, So it was, times for Europeans living there was not all that good, So that all depends too what you did, of course. You know, so I was a detailer. I was trained as a detailer too, not what you do here.
Yeah, that's what I was
as
thinking.
cars,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
It's what you do. I took a course in steel manufacturing. Okay, so trusses for buildings and columns and all that stuff. And a sideline of that was detailing sheets for the ship industry. How they take you know, a plate of steel, and then you have to outline the shape of where they want to use this piece. You know, stuff like that. That was one of the side ventures I took.
And then there wasn't much work for that. All right. Before we wrap this up, are there any stories that you want to tell during that period that we didn't go over? Anything that you want to talk about?
Oh, there's a lot of stories that I don't remember.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad that you're interested in it because you know this, and I think that is the problem with the generations, like Barb's generation, for example. You know, she hardly knows anything about her family before her time.
Yeah.
You know, because people didn't talk about it. You know, and of course because of social media, it becomes more obvious that you guys have a lot better contact of what has happened.
So do you remember anything, like any stories with your Opa or your Oma and your grandparents, anything that they told you about the time previously to whenever they were alive?
You know, I liked my grandparents on my father's side. I wasn't fussy about my grandparents on my mother's side. She was a very nice person. He was not. You know, when we go there to visit or something like that, when you had dinner, you all had dinners together. Okay? That's very common in Holland. You know, and then you eat your meal, you have to sit and wait till they say grace, and then they tell you you can start eating at his house. And when you were done, you had to fold your leg, and then you sit like this, and you were not allowed to speak
at all
at the dinner table.
Was there like a certain age that you were able to start speaking? Once you turned 18, you could speak?
We didn't go there that much, and then we got older because we didn't want to go.
Yeah, and your dad's side wasn't that?
No,
that
he
strict?
wasn't like that at all.
What were they like?
He, you know, well, they were more easier going, you know. And my grandmother, you know, she was in costume. And you've seen pictures of her, don't you?
I think I have, yes.
Hold on a second, I just noticed something. Okay.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I appreciate you sitting down here and talking with me and everything. It's mean a lot.